All right, we'll call the council meeting to order. Everybody stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, take the roll.
Mayor O'Connor.
Here.
Morissette.
Here.
Holmes.
Here.
DeZiel.
Here.
Brooke.
Here.
Hall.
Here.
All right, first up is citizen comments. Once again, this is an opportunity for people to comment on anything that has to do with the city. They have to be residents of the city. When you come forward, please state your name and where you live. Also, we do not allow comments on items that are on the agenda during citizen comments. And so try to keep your comments brief and try not to repeat other people's comments, if you would, please. So, does anyone have a comment they'd like to make? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? We'll close that portion of the agenda. Consent agenda.
Approve the meeting minutes from February 7th, 2022 regular council meeting. Approve the council claims in the amount of $12,223,209.97. Approve the final development plans for an accessory storage building and security fence at 1101 Carmichael Road, St. Croix County Government. Approve the continuation of a certificate of compliance for a multi-use CrossFit gym and additional fitness recreational uses at 2801 Harvey Street, C1 Athletics, CrossFit, St. Croix. Approve the final development plans for 2320 Jack Baralt Drive, Croix Valley Foods. Approve conditional use permit application for an accessory building in the front yard setback at 1840 River Ridge Road, Derek Holmes LLC. Approve the installation of an additional speed limit sign on 17th Street. Approve the transfer of the retail Class B beer and Class B liquor license from Postmark Grill to the Two Tradesmen LLC. Approve master development agreement with ABM. Approve the purchase of a 2019 Jeep Cherokee in the amount of $19,634. Approve the purchase of two Toro Z Master 7500 series mowers in the amount of $26,044.72 from Tri-State Bobcat. And approve to amend the ambulance service agreement with Lakeview Ambulance to allow for semi-annual performance review advisory committee meetings.
Move to approve.
Second.
Got a motion and second to approve. Roll call.
Morissette.
Yes.
Holmes.
Yes.
DeZiel.
Yes.
Brooke.
Yes.
Hall.
Yes.
Motion's approved. The consent agenda is approved. Discussion and possible action to approve the bid by skid steer guy in the amount of $1,259,783.05 for the Lakefront Park boat ramp reconstruction.
All right, I'll make this short and brief. Mike Mraz, Director of Public Works. So on February 16th, we had a bid letting for the project. 4 bids came in. Lowest bid was skid steer's guy in the stated amount. I did check with some local contractors, Mark & Johnson being one of them, to kind of get some references and see if they had heard of them doing any work. And in fact, skid steer guy has been doing some excavating work for them in the past couple of years. So staff feels comfortable approving that bid. A couple things that I want to touch on that I didn't touch on at Finance Committee is kind of just the project schedule. The ramp is actually going to be built in 2 phases. The first phase is from basically April, when the water recedes, until late June, with the goal to get it open by the July 4th weekend. So that'll be phase 1. That's kind of like the current area of the boat ramp as you currently see it. Phase 2 then would be everything to the north of there, and that would go from July, August, September, with the final wrap up probably in early October. So trying to keep the boat launch open as much as possible for people to use. Obviously, we're going to put some disclaimers out on our website and our seasonal passes that people purchase. Just say, hey, make you aware that there are going to be some times when the boat launch isn't available this summer. Please take that into account before purchasing a season pass. So with that being said, I don't know if Aaron is available or not. Aaron, can you hear us? Or
I'm here. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
There you go.
Hello?
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
there you go. I've been here the whole time. I don't know, something happened there.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, so as we talked about just briefly at finance, we have identified a funding plan for both of the potential projects. down on the riverfront. At this point in time, just because we got delayed from getting the official okay on the funding for the Transient Boardwalk system, what we're basically recommending as staff is we'll be going out for bid for that project soon. Let's see where that bid comes back in at, and then we can decide from there how to fund this remaining $350,000. We have a number of options between the TID 6 revenue, potentially ARPA funds. We have CIP funds on hand, and worst case would be having to bond, but I don't see us having to do that with how competitive this bid is, and then with our other funding sources that we have available. So like I said, at this point, we've got most of the funding locked in. We just have a little bit left that we would need to identify, but it would probably make sense to wait to see where that other project comes in at first, and then we can decide how to finalize both.
Move for approval and then be contingent on what we do with the remaining funds to be determined at a later date.
Second.
Got a motion and second to approve. Discussion?
I guess my only thought is I'd really like to steer as much of that ARPA fund toward road improvement reconstruction. So as we get later into the discussion, I would really lean toward having that TID district support the revenue along with CIP funds, but I don't know what that formula looks like, so.
Yeah, I'd like to see the information on the TID and how much money is available so that we can, because that should be used if at all possible. 'Cause I don't think that this should be taken out of other funds.
Yep. And that's not an issue. We can definitely do that. As I mentioned before, we tried to be fairly conservative with the amount of TID funding that we identified for both of these projects. Even with the amounts that we identified in our original funding plan, there's still going to be more than $6 million in TID revenue left to be used for other projects, or increasing the amount to be used for this one. So yeah, we can definitely focus on the TID for this and not have any concerns.
Yeah, and I guess just to explain further, so the TID money has to stay within a certain area, so that downtown TID would be producing that money. The ARPA money can be spent anywhere, so I just think it's wise to take the money that's limited in terms of geographic range and stick that into the boat reconstruction piece, and then look more broadly at what we have of the needs all over the city, right, for some of that infrastructure money from the Fed, so.
Yep.
Okay. Was there a motion on that?
Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize. All right, so any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion and possible action on resolution 4-22 disallowing claims submitted by Peter Pekarsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Back in October, we received a notice of claim from Peter Pekarsky, who was an announced candidate for U.S. Senate. Mr. Pekarsky notified the city of a proposed claim pursuant to Wisdot section 893.80, purporting to challenge the city's practice of marking absentee ballots with identifying information when absentee ballots are counted at a central location, pursuant to Wisconsin statute 7.52 sub 3 sub a. The city submitted this to its insurance carrier. It was reviewed and deemed to be in the best interest of the city to disallow the claim formally as permitted by Wisconsin law. Attached, you have a resolution disallowing the claim, and ultimately the disallowance provides or would require the claimant to file the legal action within 6 months from the date of the disallowance of claim, or the statute of limitations, the statutory period runs, and they would not be able to file a claim beyond that 6-month period. So formally disallowing the claim provides certainty for the council, knowing that once that 6-month time period elapses, that there can be no formal claim on this particular matter. So it's my recommendation, along with Insurance Council's recommendation, that the council adopt the resolution and disallow the claim submitted by Mr. Pekarsky.
I will move to suspend the rules.
Second.
Motion and second to suspend the rules. Roll call.
Morissette?
Yes.
Alms?
Yes.
DeZiel?
Yes.
Brooke?
Yes.
Hall?
Yes.
Motion's approved, rules are suspended.
Move to adopt Resolution 4-22.
Second.
Motion is second to adopt, discussion?
Yeah, for Mr. Vivian, so, can you just give us like in a nutshell, what is the, we use identifying marks by our poll workers, am I understanding that correctly? I'm trying to figure out what is the, what's the crux of,
So would somebody be able to figure, if they did an open records request for the poll books and all the ballots, would they be able to figure out whose absentee ballots each of those would be, if they had all that information? Would they be able to match the person's name with the absentee ballot?
The ballots aren't public record.
Oh, they are not public record. You
So-
can't, so he's wrong.
They're in a sealed bag and stored off at the county it goes to the canvas, so they are not.
So you have, so no one, so they are not subject to an open records request?
Correct.
So there's no way that somebody could figure out how somebody voted
Not under my recollection.
with what he's saying? He's
So they're
incorrect.
numbered, they're numbered. They do
Right.
get numbered, but that's,
But nobody would have access to them unless, legally, no one legally would have access to
that
them.
I'm aware of.
Mhm, okay.
I think it's a dispute basically over how elections are run in Wisconsin, basically, because we
Yeah.
are definitely not the only city that received this exact
Yes.
same notice of claim. And so the league actually lumped pretty much all of their insured entities together with the one attorney that's representing us through them for this. So we're not unique here. This is a pretty broad thing, and my guess would be is it's well, I don't know actually what the real intent or whatever would be, other than it seems to be challenging the process that, we've all been told how to follow for central count. And so I think it's a bigger picture issue that we're just involved in because we have a central count.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I would also say that this is not the first election-related inquiry that we've received. We've had some public records requests for information-related data. You're starting to see this more and more around the state. It's not just a Hudson issue. It's various towns and cities that are receiving these requests. And as we know, there's interest in the way elections are run. And how ballots are collected and tabulated and whatnot. So I don't anticipate this will be the last inquiry that we'll receive on either this topic or additional records requests, and you'll see it again, I'm sure.
I guess, sorry.
No, I was going to say, so for now, our recommendation on this one is to disallow the claim.
Okay. And just to be clear, so the claim is saying something about the constitutionality of the portion of Wisconsin state statute, 7.523A.
Correct.
Are we good on that? I just want to make sure that we're good on the state statute.
Yeah, and so really it's not, the point of the conversation here is not to discuss the merits. So ultimately, this gentleman is saying, I may have a claim under Wisconsin law. If you have a potential claim against a municipality, you are required to notify that municipality and to submit a notice of claim. Municipalities then really have three options. Try to resolve the claim, ignore it and do nothing, or formally disallow the claim. And why would we formally disallow the claim? Well, that starts the process of putting that claimant on notice that they have 6 months to either take action or to not take action. And if they don't take action during that 6-month period, then they're forever barred from filing that claim. So it's really, this is pure process. It's not evaluating the merits. It's not taking a particular position. Here, if you look at the notice of claim, there's no request for damages being sought. It would be a claim challenging the constitutionality of the practice, which, as Aaron indicated, is not just a practice of the city of Hudson, but a practice of municipalities across the state of Wisconsin. So, presumably, if this person is going to file a claim, it will be a claim that is filed against many communities, and it will challenge this particular practice, and then it will work its way up through the court system, and somebody or some group at the top of the legal chain will make a determination as to whether this practice is constitutional or whether it's not constitutional.
So after the 6-month mark then, or in that 6-month mark, if he came forward, then we would look at the merits of it. Am I understanding it correctly?
Well, if there were a summons and complaint filed, then yes, it would be referred to Insurance Defense Counsel, and then they would proceed to defend the city on the merits of the claim. That's correct.
Everybody good? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. I've got a request here to move the issue of the Hagen Street Bridge up on the agenda. We have the consultant on Zoom. And so if everybody's okay with that, I'd like to do that. Hey, Dean.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council. So my first item of many tonight is talking about the Hagen Street Bridge over Interstate 94. The city has been working with a consultant, Strand Associates, which I believe Joe is on Zoom here tonight. I don't see him, but I saw his waiting request on there, so hopefully he's still with us to answer any questions.
Yep, I'm here, Dean.
Okay, great. Thank you, Joe. So we've been discussing this. As we kind of all know, the existing Hagen Street Bridge over Interstate 94, so that bridge being the one that runs over I-94 in the vicinity of Taco John's. So it's the western of the two bridges that span I-94, crossing I-94 to get from our north half to south half of our city. As probably we all know by now, the existing bridge has a number of different problems that we experience on a day-to-day basis. Poor pedestrian bicycle facilities crossing the bridge. Right now there's a 4-foot wide path, if you can call it a path, crossing the bridge. And in the wintertime, half that path is taken up by a snow mound. So for Mike, sorry. Large volumes of vehicles that cross that bridge. There's over 13,000 vehicles per day that cross that bridge. Number of people getting to and from the downtown area to the Hill business area, people crossing I-94 there to get their kids to school at E.P. Rock Elementary, and a lot of people crossing I-94 there to get onto the 14th Street slip ramp on I-94 from the Hill business area. Speaking of large volumes of vehicles, with the Wisdot Carmichael Roadbridge maintenance project this summer, this bridge will be even more heavily used, and unfortunately, obviously, we're not going to replace this bridge before that project happens, but this will be a kind of a test to show, that we really need some expanded capacity on this bridge. And then also the existing bridge, while it's structurally sound, is rusting, spalling, and it's not really a great gateway feature for our community in the state of Wisconsin. So we've worked with our consultants to come up with 3 different design options, which a layout of each option is provided in your packet. And I know, I think all of you, if not most of you, have been in attendance to one of our public engagement meetings. So you guys are familiar with the options, but just to state, option 1 would replace the existing bridge in the place that it is right now with a wider 5-lane bridge, so essentially adding a lane in each direction. Would continue to have traffic signals controlling the intersections on both the north and south ends of the bridge. Option 2 would replace the existing bridge with a wider bridge with roundabouts on either side, one at the Taco John's intersection and one on the south side of the bridge at Crestview. With option 1 and option 2, the new bridge would have a much wider non-motorized transportation facility so that people walking and biking have a nice way to cross the bridge there. Option 3 would leave the existing bridge alone and would construct a new bridge crossing I-94 west of the existing bridge. It would connect Crestview and Cooley Road to the west there. The intersection of Hagen Street and Crestview would either need a new traffic signal or would need to be reconstructed as a roundabout as an option 2. So that being said, the city held 2 public informational meetings related to this project. One was focused to the immediate, businesses and properties immediately surrounding the existing bridge. So people like Taco John's, the condominiums on the north side, and the office buildings on the south side. The other meeting was open to the general public. We had pretty good attendance at both those meetings. We received a number of comments and questions and stuff at those meetings, which a lot of those were provided in your council packet tonight. I know since the packet was put together, we've received a number of other comments, and I emailed you guys those, the comments that I received throughout the past couple days here. And I know residents of the Crestview Drive cul-de-sac area have emailed you guys as well some additional comments in regards to particularly option 3 with their concern for additional traffic potentially coming up into the cul-de-sac with option 3. So the presentation materials from the meetings are on our website as well. So staff has been kind of split between option 2 and option 3, kind of depending. There's pros and cons to both of them, so we haven't landed on one or the other. So we kind of, consensus is maybe not option 1, just because of less of the safety benefits at a higher cost. So a little bit behind, and this was covered in the presentation, but the quick schedule for all this is involving the federal infrastructure funding, which we'll talk a little bit more about later in this meeting. Because of the timeline involved with getting those applications out the door, we need to have a decision made on which option we're going with soon. If not at this meeting, the very latest we would recommend would be March 7th to make sure that we have time to put those applications together. Yeah, essentially we need to have an option chosen so that we can form the narrative to put in the grant application and have our best chance of success for.
So Dean, what do we need to do tonight?
If possible, choose an option, and if not, first of all, if not, we would want to authorize our consultants to get started on this grant application for the
That's the
federal
most
funding.
important thing tonight,
That is
right?
the absolute most important thing tonight. And, the more time that we're able to have, this alternative chosen, the better, just for being able to get stuff done on time.
Sure.
So that's kind of the behind it.
So the application hinges on us making a decision, or no?
At the very latest, March 7th. We'd suggest, if possible, making one tonight, just so we have the more time to be able to put everything together, but.
That gives you 2 weeks to start the process on the application.
Right.
Dean, I've heard the constituents up there, both at the Colonial Apartments or not apartments, condos, and then Crestview. And I think we just need to take a timeout on the design aspect of this and come up with a hybrid between 1 and 2. Go back to the drawing board, I hate to say, because I don't want to slow this down. I've been talking about this for over 5 years. And safety-wise, it needs to be done, but we have to do it right. And if 3 is not an option and 2 is the roundabout option, they don't like that, then maybe we could do a hybrid of that roundabout design with the traditional stoplights, so we don't lose anybody's land, and we can figure out the in and out of that property of the Colonial condos there, and Taco John's, drive through there.
Mm-hmm.
There's got to be a compromise there. You can't just say, these are the 3 options, that's it.
So, go ahead, Dean.
Oh, I was just gonna say, so what you're suggesting would be a signal at the Taco John's intersection and a roundabout at the south intersection.
Yeah.
Okay.
And a traditional 4-way, take the slip ramp out if it makes sense on your westbound Crestview, and make it a traditional 4-way stop, so everybody at that 4-way, at that intersection has the same ability to turn whichever way they want safely.
That Crestview?
At Crestview and Hagen, yes,
Okay.
including coming out of the river, the west end of Crestview.
Okay.
I mean, we're jamming these 3 options, and we know that not everybody saw what we've seen. And no one always takes the opportunity to go online, or do they have time to go online to look at those, 3 options. We can have all the meetings we want, but if they're not gonna come, they're not gonna come, so we have to make a better decision from the options we do or don't have. And right now, we don't have a good decision, or option, I should say. They're nice, and I agree, but we have to come up with something, a compromise between 2 and 1 is my thought, and I think my constituents would probably feel the same way, being representative of that district. But I don't want to stop the funding. I want to get that done. Because it's a safety hazard up there.
Dean, what is the rationale for the recommendation of 2 or 3?
Yeah, so option 2 with the roundabouts is essentially the reason behind roundabouts in general, especially single lane roundabouts, is that they provide a lot more safety for vehicles in particular, but also pedestrians crossing the roundabouts. So people coming into roundabouts have to slow down. They can't just zip through the roundabout at whatever speed they want to go. You have to slow down to 15 to 20 miles per hour. And because you have to do that, any crashes that you do have are less severe. And also, you're only looking for the person, if you're approaching the roundabout, you're only looking for the person to your left, right? Once you enter the roundabout, you have the right of way until you exit it again.
But don't you still have to worry about the people who aren't following the right of way on your right?
I mean,
Aren't there
yeah.
accidents coming from the people that fail to yield on the right?
Well, yes, there are that, but, you also, in a traditional intersection, have to believe that somebody's going to follow the rules of the road as well, right? You're not, somebody's not going to run a red light and that kind of thing. So there's always some level of trust involved with any transportation decision you make, so.
But as it is right now, the topography would more or less benefit having lights there instead of roundabouts.
So I want to hear the rest of the rationale for 2 and 3.
Sorry.
Okay. So 2 would be essentially the safety benefit would be the highest, I believe.
2, you said, is the safest?
Yeah, because of those intersections being changed to roundabouts, people would be going slower. Roundabouts have a pretty proven track record, especially single lane ones, of having less crashes and less severe crashes in particular. Option 3, there's a couple different pros for option 3. The first one is the cost is less. The second one being it provides redundancy for our transportation system. It provides another bridge crossing on 94, whereas the other ones don't. Those are kind of the 2 biggest ones for option 3, and also kind of provides a more direct connection for people going to and from the hill area to the downtown area, rather than having to make 2 different turns to get there, if that makes sense.
Sorry, Randy, go ahead.
The DOT is gonna do Carmichael. Are we splitting a cost with them, or is it their entire cost?
For the Carmichael maintenance
Yep.
project, that is their entire cost.
Okay, so if they came back after we decided to build a bridge, $7-8 million to build a new bridge to the west, and then they come back and say, well, now you have to help us build this bridge, rebuild the Hagen Street Bridge. That's on us again, so we're gonna spend another how many $1 million on redoing Hagen Bridge, because we spent $8 million already on a bridge to the west.
Okay, so
Yeah, so what I'm getting
yeah.
at, there was a gentleman at our meeting, on the last meeting, public meeting you had, that suggested that we pay for that one up front. And I was all for that, but the more we thought about it, and the more of the issues we have with the Wisconsin DOT, either helping or not helping with our projects going forward, we're gonna end up spending in excess of $16 million. If we put our own bridge in, if that's the one we approve, the third option, and then they come back in 10 to 20 years and say, you need to help us pay for this, or you need to replace that bridge.
Sure. So the existing bridge over I-94 is the property of Wisconsin DOT.
Yeah.
When they would, so right now the bridge has a sufficiency rating of in the 70s or something like that. So that means in about 15 to 20 years from now is when they'd be looking to replace the bridge.
Yep.
If they had their own schedule. Right?
Which, you're talking about the Hagen Street?
The existing bridge, yep.
And that's their bridge, state's bridge.
Yes.
But if we fix it now, we incur a cost on it.
Correct. It's essentially because we'd be moving up the timeline of that bridge's life, so to speak. That's where the DOT would be like, they've essentially, this is paraphrasing, but they've essentially told us that because the bridge is structurally sound and it is a decent sufficiency rating, they're not gonna fund replacement of that bridge right now. Even though we have a lot of congestion issues, capacity issues on the bridge, they've essentially told us that's our problem because that's our traffic going across the bridge or something. They've told us that they're not gonna oppose, replacement of that bridge. They're not gonna keep us from doing it, even though it does affect I-94, below the bridge as well. But essentially they've said, if you want to pursue this project, you're not going to get funding from us, more or less, at this point. So going back to Randy's comment with the existing bridge, because it's their bridge, someday they will have to replace that, right? Say 15 to 20 years from now. At that point in time, we wouldn't be responsible for the bridge itself, the replacement of the bridge, because it's their bridge, but we would be responsible for any intersection.
Everything leading into that bridge.
So it wouldn't be, multiply if we went with option 3 right now for $6 or $7 million, it wouldn't be multiplied by 2 for, later on, but it would be the cost for the intersections later on if we chose option 3 right now.
Right.
So it's not 16 million, it'd probably be like 9 or 10 million.
Irregardless,
something
it's
like
more
that,
than we're thinking ahead right now. And then at the same time, like when they were addressing the redoing Carmichael intersection, and I'm not trying to confuse the two bridges, we were gonna get stuck with $35 million, or splitting that.
Splitting
Yeah.
it.
That total cost. So that's what I'm getting at, and why I'm not leaning in for option 3, which is, to me, at first made sense, but then thinking that this way, that we're gonna end up getting double whammy on this, one way or the other. And we have to address it without the DOT. I mean, we know that.
Yeah, I agree with you there.
So why couldn't we just come up with some kind of hybrid?
So if you, and maybe Joe can chime in on this after I'm done with this, but if you had a traffic signal at the north intersection and a roundabout at the south intersection, you would essentially, in order to get the capacity that you need for, long term, you would have to build a north intersection, essentially for that 5 lanes wide, right?
Yeah.
So your bridge ends up being large, and then your roundabout actually on the bottom ends up being bigger because you'd have 2 lanes coming across the bridge going into that roundabout, swinging around to go to Crestview. So
Don't put a roundabout there.
yeah. I mean, then you're at option 1. So
Well,
yeah, I'm just saying.
it's not gonna, well, yeah, split the difference. Put one on the south end and then leave. Seriously, I mean, something has to be, we can't be just jammed
No, I know.
into
I
3
just like
options.
Split the difference, I thought was kind of
Well,
interesting. Comment.
Okay. I've got some questions.
Yeah.
Are you done, Randy?
yeah,
Okay.
thanks.
All right, so you said there's 13,000 cars a day.
Yep.
What is the ratio of the amount of traffic at peak times versus the non-peak times?
Yeah, that's a great question. Joe on our call here might have a quicker answer than I do. Joe, do you have any insight into that question? Hopefully he's not muted.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. Just give me one sec. Sorry, I got a range of papers in front of me. I think we're in the 10 to 12% range of, I know the PM peak controls, so, we took traffic counts in 2019, or sorry, 2021, in the fall, was school in session and everything. Shoot, I'm sorry, I don't have that in front of me, but I do think it's 10 to 12%
Yeah,
from what
so
I
What do you mean?
recall seeing.
10 to 12% of the daily traffic happens in the peak hours. So, and usually, I think that's usually between like 4:30 and 5:30, something like that, Joe.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's probably about double. Does that, okay, so if there's 10 to 12% of the traffic in the peak hour, then, well, of course, you're gonna have more traffic between like 7 o'clock in the morning and 6 o'clock in the evening.
Yeah, generally what you see is that there's usually an AM peak hour and a PM peak hour, right?
Right.
So in this case, if I remember correctly, the AM peak hour isn't as significant just because I think probably because of the commercial center activity, usually that's more, in the afternoon, evening type stuff. So the PM peak hour is more significant in this area. You do have the AM peak in, the sense that people are driving their kids to school at EP Rock, or you have people, going to work, obviously, or they're,
But they're not going shopping where
Right.
the others are going,
Yep.
they're going shopping in the evening. Mhm.
Right, exactly. Yep, so the PM peak is the highest hour in the day for traffic.
Okay.
Yeah,
And,
I guess I would just, oh, sorry, I would just add too that, the predominant movements in both peaks were really westbound at Crestview and wrapping around to take a northbound right at Cooley.
So essentially
And,
people going
really
from
kind of
Crestview
going
to
to
get
that
onto the
slip ramp
slip
area.
okay, so they're heading from County Market and Walmart.
Heading
over
onto
to-
I-94.
Heading up to the neighborhood where Taco Bell is, or Taco John's, I mean. So then, would a roundabout really be able to handle the peak traffic without backups and other issues?
Yeah, well, I know Joe has been modeling this in traffic modeling software and stuff, and so we do, we take our existing traffic volumes, we grow that because we know our community is growing, and historically
Yes.
it's been growing about 1% per year for traffic volumes. COVID notwithstanding, but traffic has pretty much rebounded since pre-COVID. So extrapolating that into the future, we can get to what we expect in 20 years, and then we went the next step forward. And for each of these options, we had a sensitivity analysis done to say, okay, how much more traffic can we add to this intersection before it fails?
Okay.
Essentially. So if traffic ends up being a lot more than we expect, 20 years from now, or if something happens on exit 2 and more traffic has to come over here, can we handle more traffic than we expect, essentially? And the answer
No.
is yes. For
Not now.
I mean, with these options, I'm saying. Sorry, Randy, make that clear. With these proposed options,
Okay.
yes.
What is the current width of the bridge, and then what would the width of the bridge be for options 1 and 2?
Oh, boy. So the existing bridge, so it's 3 lanes wide, 1 travel lane each direction and 1 left turn lane in the middle. I believe those lanes are a little bit wider than normal, so it's about 40 feet wide for the travel lanes, plus you have that 4-foot sidewalk onto the side.
So about 45 feet?
Or about 45 feet, more or less.
Okay.
With option 1, there'd be 5 travel lanes across the bridge, plus the 12-foot path, so you're talking about something like 75 feet wide. And Joe can correct me if I'm wrong. With the roundabout, the bridge would be narrower because you would not have as many lanes crossing the bridge. You wouldn't need as many lanes crossing the bridge to make traffic flow. So you're probably talking 65 to 70 feet, something like that wide for the bridge. One of the reasons why
You're right there, Dee.
Oh, sorry, Joe, you can go ahead.
Oh, and I was just gonna say, you're right there. I think with the roundabout, you're looking at 3 lanes plus the median and the shared use path. So, 36 shared use path, you're right. So 50 to 60 feet.
One of the reasons the bridge for the roundabout ends up being roughly as expensive as the one for the expanded signal option is because the bridge flares out to accommodate the roundabout on the north side. So it's a little bit uneven. It's a little wider at the north end, a little narrower at the south end.
Okay. What is the change in elevation for Bridge 3? And what would be the grade on that bridge?
Yeah, good question. So Joe probably knows a better answer to that off the top of his head, but the bridge would be built at an incline. I believe it was something like 4 or 5%. Is that in the ballpark, Joe?
I think that's in the ballpark. We'd want to follow up with our structures guy to verify though.
So it'd probably be running at approximately the same grade that Cooley Road does, kind of climbing the hill, or maybe even a little bit less than that. Yep.
So that's quite a steep grade for a bridge like that, isn't it?
It's a little steeper than you normally, well, normally bridges are pretty flat. But it's not that, structurally, a bridge can be, as long as it's not a really
Okay.
significant.
I'm just
grade.
concerned about icy roads.
Sure. No, that's a good concern. We would be designing it so that the drainage goes off to the side, so it's not in the roadway area. just the same as a road. We obviously don't want any roads icing up as much as we can help it either. So we would be looking to, if we chose option 3, collecting as much of the stormwater before the bridge and after the bridge so that you don't have as much possibility for icing on the bridge itself.
So, all right, if we had a roundabout at the north end of the bridge,
Mhm.
is there really enough room for the condo owners to get in and out? And is there enough room, I mean, how close are they gonna be to is the end unit gonna be to the sidewalk or to the nearest part of this roundabout?
Yeah, so there is an existing sidewalk there along 11th Street right now. So really where the widening happens to accommodate the roundabout is closer to the intersection. We had to kind of push the intersection southward a little bit to, limit the impacts to that property.
Okay,
Oh,
so you're actually moving it a little bit south?
Yeah, so the existing,
Okay.
like the existing sidewalk where it is on 11th Street, I don't believe that anything is getting any closer to the building than what it is right now on that sidewalk. We probably would be looking, if we selected option 2, to provide some sort of, fencing or, some sort of amenity to help with, blocking either noise or,
Well,
sight
somebody's
or
gonna
that
have a very,
Yeah,
a view that's not gonna be very nice.
If I may interject, that was a concern of the folks that live there, is coming in and out of their driveway.
Yes, I got that message too, and so,
yeah.
so there's several, so getting in and out of that driveway, if you've got a roundabout, you could have constant traffic during peak times heading north, so then it's gonna be really hard for anybody coming out of that driveway to head north.
Could be.
Okay. And
So,
with a light, there
Yeah.
would be some intervals there that they'd be able to get out.
it's a little bit of a trade-off with that. So with the traffic signal right now, you're essentially stopped right until you go.
And then they can't get across the
Yep,
southbound
yeah.
lane.
So, yeah, exactly. So with the traffic signal, there's more of a potential, I believe, for a queue as a line of vehicles to extend from the intersection blocking the driveway. And with the roundabout, you might have less gaps on the northbound side, but you would have probably more of a gap on the southbound side. And we wouldn't put a median through there, so they could make that left turn if they wanted to as well. Yep. The other thing,
Well, they'd probably have to make a right turn, go around the roundabout.
well, I was
and
just
head
going to say
north,
that if they didn't feel comfortable with making that left turn, they can do that, take
Yeah.
a right, and then go loop around the roundabout and come back north. Yep.
Okay.
And just building on your comments, Councilman Member Hall, super concerned about walkers and cyclists during those peak hours, being able to make it without some kind of normal flashing light where they get the right of way.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
if you've got a peak flow there, then there is no interval for pedestrians and cyclists to get across those
Yeah.
lanes.
Yep. So with a roundabout, pedestrians and cyclists, what they would do is they cross one direction of traffic at a time. So
Okay, so
right
you've
now
got
it-
islands in each,
Yeah, yep, exactly. So a traditional intersection, you have to cross everything at once, right? Yeah, whether you have a hand or not, you have to cross everything at once. With a roundabout, you essentially, if you're walking up to or biking up to the intersection, you first of all look left for the traffic that's coming towards you from that direction. If you feel comfortable, you cross the median. Then you do the same thing, looking for the other way, and then cross that other leg. And thankfully, these are single lane roundabouts, so it'd be one lane on each side that you'd be negotiating. Yep. So it ends up being actually, in a lot of ways, a better crossing because you don't have to take that, 3 to 5 lanes of traffic or whatever it is to cross all at once. And, going back to people, having trust in people, sometimes vehicles, if they're turning left across this crosswalk at a traffic signal, they're not looking for the pedestrian as much, or coming, the opposing
No, they're
right
not gonna be
turn as
looking for
well.
the pedestrians, they're gonna be looking at the traffic coming
Exactly.
at them in the
Yep.
roundabout.
So I'm sorry, am I hearing pretty much some concern about roundabouts? Is that kind of consensus among the council, is that there's some general concern about the roundabout option?
Yeah,
So I guess what I would say then is, I think from what Dina said, a hybrid option probably does not make sense. I mean, I get the concept of let's do roundabout of one and lighten the other, but, I think to be honest, if we're having concerns about roundabouts, I would say then we should just focus on option one. There's nothing wrong with option one. I mean, clearly it's what we do in pretty much everywhere else in the city. It's understood, it's expected, those sort of things. It probably will alleviate a number of the concerns that some of the neighbors have brought up with option two. So I would say, it sounds to me like I like the concept of a hybrid, but it sounds to me from Dean that that's probably not really feasible with the way you'd have to kind of structure one half the bridge and then into the other half and that sort of stuff. We don't want it to sound like we're trying to force any option on the council. It was just kind of this is what came out of the planning process, and it's up to the council what you feel comfortable with. As staff, we're more than fine with any of these options. We just want the council to be comfortable with it, and so if it seems like option one's the one that the council is supportive of, then let's move forward with that and see if we can get some funding.
well, I appreciate that comment, Aaron, and Dean, maybe you can answer it, is if the big talk at the one meeting was longevity and looking further into the future and addressing the need of the growth of the community. And one, you said, was the lesser of all three options as far as planning out far enough. So we would have to, it's what's a 25-year
Yeah,
ahead?
yeah.
Number one was the least looking forward, addressing the growth need.
So all three options handle the traffic volumes in 20 years from now. It's kind of beyond that. I think that's probably where
Yeah.
you're going with that. So option one and option two essentially handled the same amount of traffic beyond 20 years from now. Option three actually handled less because of not reconstructing these existing intersections essentially.
So is there a way to make option one go further out to the future? Wider, if that's the deal or not?
I honestly don't know how in our limited space that we would make anything any wider there. At that point in time, you're getting into, needing more space, say, along Cooley Road somehow, which I mean, if you had to add 2 more lanes on Cooley Road, you'd be adding a mega retaining wall along I-94. This is just me kind of spitballing on this, obviously, but, I think it would be very significant to add capacity to that option.
And if I
Dean,
remember,
what's the difference in capacity between one and two then? I'm trying to understand what Randy was saying, that one doesn't provide for as much future growth, or are they pretty much the same, one and two?
It's pretty much the same 1 and 2. Yep.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
This is for handling traffic above and beyond what we expect in 20 years from now.
Okay, sorry about that. Thank you, Sarah. Go ahead. I did not mean to interrupt.
no worries. I was just gonna, if I remember correctly, one of the concerns about option one was that it was not as safe because of some turning lanes. Is that correct? Was that part of
Yeah.
the reason why one wasn't quite as desirable by the staff?
Yeah, so option one, so it's essentially your traditional signalized intersection, and it would probably come with a lot of the same issues that we see with traditional signalized intersections, which means people can go faster through those intersections, and you have more opportunities for conflict for people who are crossing each other, turning, even right angle crashes if somebody's running a red light, that kind of thing. And also is less safe, I believe, for people who are crossing on foot or by bike, for those particular reasons of especially people turning left and not looking for the pedestrian in the crosswalk. That is really significant for pedestrian safety.
All right,
Those
so-
are my reservations for option one, yes.
So we know one thing that we need to do tonight, and that's approve moving forward. I don't know that, I mean, obviously, this is gonna be at the pleasure of the council, but I don't know if you guys are ready to vote on an option tonight. We can certainly consider this again, over a period of time, and then come back for the meeting in March if you wanted to do that. Unless you want to hammer this out tonight and try to come up with an option tonight.
All right, is there any interest in option 3?
Yeah, there is. Some of us have been patiently waiting. So those are my constituents in District 3, both at Taco John's and RJ Meats and Colonial Hills. And I've had conversations and communication. And what I'm hearing from my constituents in District 3 there are option 3 is by far the best option for a couple reasons. One is it doesn't cut into that land. There's a lot of concern about the size of the roundabouts. And just for the record, I want to say I love roundabouts, but I'm just not convinced that this area has enough room to do a roundabout well. So I do share the concern about roundabouts in this particular schema. I've heard the same concerns about getting out of Colonial Hills. I've heard the same concerns from Taco John's about business impact and RJ Meats. A big thing we haven't talked about, but I do want to put this on the table, is staging. So your staging construction for the new bridge is the least obtrusive to local businesses and local traffic. I think that's a huge advantage. So you could be building that new bridge option, and it wouldn't affect those businesses at all. And it really wouldn't affect traffic flow through the town. And I think that's a huge thing to consider. I also think safety is the third reason. Safety for crossings. I know at the Public Works meeting, Dean, we talked a little bit about, I had a concern on what would be the new juncture of the bridge on Cooley and wherever the new bridge would come through there. I had some concerns about cars coming up Cooley, taking a left to kind of before they get onto the bridge. Looking at that, but I think we could use it with kind of a crosswalk signal or something like we have at the YMCA or something. I think there's ways to remedy that, but I do have a concern about that. But I think in terms of pedestrian safety and bike safety, I actually think option 3 is your safest bet. I think it allows different ways to cross, and I'm intrigued by just that idea that there would be some, it looks like from the schema, and I can't see all the details, that there's a really good portion of that bridge that would be designated for pedestrian and bike safety, so I think that's huge. My fourth reason is I think it would divert downtown traffic off before they have to get on the 11th Street Bridge. So if you're on the Crestview side and you want to go downtown, this is a magnificent flow of traffic right onto Cooley. You don't have to deal with the lights at 11th Street coming off. You don't have to deal with the lights at Cooley. People would self-select. So if you wanted to take the freeway entrance from downtown, you go that way. If you want to take the freeway entrance to Slip Ramp, you stay on the traditional 11th Street Bridge. Depending on where you live, right, depending on where you're going, that's huge. That would just be a great way of splitting traffic almost before it even got to the 11th Street Bridge. It's also the cheapest option. I don't want to go cheap on this. I actually want to get it right. But I'm intrigued that a new bridge is cheaper to build than to redo a existing bridge. So that's interesting to me. And then one of the things we haven't talked about is we haven't talked about aesthetics, and I know that came up in Public Works. We've talked about that. Part of the idea of this bridge is we want to create a gateway into Wisconsin that is welcoming and beautiful. And I think we have a much better chance of doing that with the new bridge, because that would be the first thing you see when you cross into our state, as opposed to the non-glamorous bridge that exists now. So kind of like the old thing, you can put lipstick on a pig, but still a pig, right? The 11th Street Bridge would need a lot of work, I think. And I would rather do a new bridge that's going to get people excited about coming to our town. Maybe they're going to stop, maybe they're going to stop and frequent us. And then the last reason is, and this is where I think I have a conversation maybe with Randy, but I don't see a lot of wisdom in building or widening a bridge that doesn't belong to us. It's not our bridge. It's the state of Wisconsin. It's Wisdot's bridge. They should put the dime into improving their bridge, and they will in 15 to 20 years if we're patient. And what I see is if we construct the new bridge, option 3, we have a really solid bridge that's going to go for years and years and years. Wisdot's going to come back in 15 to 20 years when that bridge gets structurally, more unsound. And they're going to have to put the dime into making that a better bridge. Yes, we might need to do a little bit of work at the intersections, it sounds like. But ultimately, I think we then end up with 2 great structurally sound bridges in town that are functional. Why have 1 bridge when you can have 2? It, to me, doesn't make sense. So again, I've heard from constituents. I think there's reasons. I don't think option 1 is a great way to go, and I think the roundabouts are prohibitive on 2 just because of the size. So bottom line is, to me, I think option 3 is a clear winner, and that's kind of what I'm hearing from constituents. So I would like to not necessarily have to make a decision tonight. I encourage us to continue to work the process. I encourage the public to continue to contact us with their concerns, with their hopes. I don't see a need to make a decision, but to me, I really think we should not put aside that option 3, because I really think in the long term, in 50 years, if you have 2 great bridges diverting traffic flow like that through town, you're not going to regret it.
Well, we could also have a special meeting next week if needed to make a decision if you wanted a decision sooner, and we're not ready to make a decision tonight. So I've still got it. Okay, so if we're going to consider option 3, then how would traffic be managed at the T intersection of the new bridge and Cooley Road?
Yeah,
Would that be a stoplight or a stop sign?
That would be to be determined, but probably a stop sign, at least beginning, and we can kind of see how it goes, I suppose, with that. But we probably be looking to keep, so the traffic heading westbound on Cooley, say you're coming from Taco John's, you're going to downtown, we probably would keep that intersection to be able to turn right only, because there really be not much reason for turning left there. So it at least minimizes, the amount of, conflict points, so to speak.
Okay, so then if they
Yeah.
wanted to, okay, so,
Yeah, I mean, the only reason you would turn left there is. would
yeah,
be
there
to go
really
to
isn't a need. Okay.
So I guess at this point in time, I would assume that it would be a stop sign controlled intersection, but that would be something we'd have to kind of bear out with the design of everything.
Okay, so then there'd have to be a sign at the, at the Taco John's intersection that would say, no left turn onto bridge.
Yeah, we'll have to figure out like
Something
those
like that,
details. of
okay,
how to
a
make it
warning.
work.
So then, all right. If we were to go with option 3, then Randy, what would need to be done on the Hagen Street Bridge in order to improve safety on the Hagen Street Bridge for the people who are going to be using that?
Well, you're gonna have to put new pedestrian crossings on each end, and probably crossing over. That's probably more of his question to answer that physically, on what he has to build there to get people safely across.
Mm-hmm.
That would be his.
Yeah, so at this point, and I know we got a comment about, do we leave the existing pedestrian accommodations across the existing bridge in place, or do we take them out? There was a comment about that. I would suggest probably leaving what's there in place so that anybody
'cause
who
they're gonna cross.
directly, if you're going to EP Rock from
Yes.
the neighborhood, like you don't have to go out of your way to get back there.
Yeah.
That being said, we would be having, at each intersection, I would look to enhance the pedestrian crossings across those legs of the
Okay.
intersections as much as we possibly can with that option, yeah.
All right.
Details to be determined, I guess, on that, but yeah, something, we'd look for
Okay,
something there.
so do you have any information or what are your best guesses? Would traffic be evenly divided between those 2 bridges, would you expect? Or what does your modeling suggest?
Yeah, I would expect that it wouldn't be evenly divided between the 2 bridges because of that movement onto the slip ramp on I-94, which those people would still continue to use the existing bridge with option 3. And that is a very heavy movement, as Joe said earlier. So those people would continue to use that bridge. It'd essentially be, that connection between downtown and the Hill business area that would use that new bridge. You know, roughly speaking, of the 13,000 vehicles that currently traverse the existing bridge right now, I'd say probably 3,000 to 5,000 of them would go to the new bridge, and the rest would remain on the existing bridge, something like that. That's just ballpark, so.
Yeah, so anybody who needs to take a right turn onto Cooley, and anybody who wants to go straight on 11th, they're going to stay on the original bridge, but anybody who's going to be going downtown will be using the new bridge. I mean, you don't have ideas of the percents?
Well, I mean, we know the turning movements that are there right now. So
Yes.
that's kind of where I was getting at, the 3,000 to 5,000.
Okay.
It's kind of based on the existing.
That's, okay, that's based on the turning movements, okay.
Yep. So that's probably what we'd see, I would say initially anyway.
Okay,
Are you done?
yeah.
Sorry. I've heard both of you address the businesses on that corner in the intersection, but you haven't addressed the residents I represent over on the end of Crestview on the Bluff line. What about them? Those are the ones that your email box got filled up with, that don't want option 3.
Councilmember Morissette and Mr. Mayor, I was thinking about that same email that came in this evening from that group of citizens who, I know you did a great job trying to get the message out there about the meetings. Is this something that we could do like a public hearing on? Is there, if we're really considering this option 3, which is much closer to those residents that you're talking about, that we could have a special meeting like you had with the Taco Johns and the condo people?
Yep. We would
So-
probably want to schedule that for like next week. So that's good.
And we could do that, so, and we, just to make things a little bit easier, are we kind of in agreement that option 2 is off the table?
That option 2 is?
Yeah. I mean, I'm hearing option 1 and option 3, and I've heard, people talking about some of the disadvantages of option 2. I'm just saying, if we're gonna do a public hearing, let's try to whittle this down a little bit, but if not, I mean, if you think option 2 is still a viable option, then.
Well, Dean is saying option 2 is the safest for
I know, but.
pedestrians and,
But it doesn't seem to have a lot of traction here with council members.
I'm amenable to option 2, but where I get stuck on with option 2 is, and 1, is if we could see that overlaid, where we could actually see the roundabout overlaid option 1, as far as the
That's a good
land
idea.
usage.
Okay.
Because if there's not that much of a difference, then I guess I would be more amenable to option 2. I'm kind of with Mr. Morissette's thought on option 3. Option 3 to me feels like we're just holding back on the solution, pedestrian and otherwise, off of the existing bridge. Meaning, I think we're spending for this bridge plus fixing the intersections eventually. And I don't know that it changes all that much, that long line of traffic on 11th Street, when everybody from the south doesn't want to take Carmichael to get onto 94, so they're crossing 11th Street to use the slip ramp, right? That still stays, in my opinion.
Do we have also, I'm sorry, Bill, anything else?
No.
One of the things that came up, I think, it came up, I can't remember who brought it up. I think Joyce, you brought it up about traffic being diverted in option 3 directly into downtown instead of coming across the bridge and then taking left, going into downtown, coming off of the other side of the freeway. So do we have any analysis on that at all? How many of the cars, what percentage of the cars are actually doing that are coming across that bridge?
Right now, today? you're talking
Yeah,
about?
I mean, today.
Yeah, so maybe if Joe's still tuning in here, he can correct me if I'm wrong, but so in the peak hour, in the PM peak hour that we've been analyzing, approximately 150 vehicles turning northbound left, so coming from Crestview, going towards downtown on Cooley. And then, a similar amount coming the other direction. So that's 300 vehicles making those movements. And if the PM peak hour is 10% of the overall daily, then you just multiply that by 10. So that's where you get the 3,000 number. So
Okay.
You know,
And that's, one of the things that I don't think has been discussed here, and I think some of the people in the interior neighborhood would probably argue that we haven't discussed about the people that are not taking the left on Cooley going into downtown, but rather are going directly up to Laurel and coming into downtown using Laurel. And I know that that's a significant number as well.
that's increased quite a bit.
Yeah, and I'm guilty of that myself. And I know that the people over there in Laurel are concerned about that. Have we done any type of analysis on that, on what these routes would mean for that traffic?
not specifically on that traffic movement. My gut reaction is that if you make the movements easier to get to and from downtown on Cooley,
That they won't do that.
whichever way you go about it, that probably will lessen
Sure.
people needing to use Laurel to head downtown because they have an easier movement on Cooley to get there.
All right, so we got a suggestion here that we hold a public hearing to kind of continue this conversation on the different options. Is that something that you guys would want to do? And you want to do a special meeting for that? Probably need to, because our next meeting is the deadline.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we would have to have a special meeting. In the meantime, we still want to move forward tonight with directing staff to start the process on a grant.
Yeah, so
Right.
authorizing our consultants to start working on that.
So Aaron, any issues with next week?
No, I mean, I think we could definitely do a public hearing. I guess my question was, do you want to do a full public hearing on this, or do you just want Dean to reach out to those neighbors and set up a meeting with them to discuss it with them and to get their feedback that way? Or would, because the other meetings that Dean had weren't council public hearings, they were just kind of informational, kind of outreach, whatever meetings, and then those people after those meetings contacted the council, let them know. So do you want to do it that way, where Dean just sets up an individual sort of meeting with that group to discuss, and then he'll bring that feedback to our March 7th meeting, and I'm sure they'll also contact you, the neighbors, like the other ones have? Or would you prefer to have it as a, overall public hearing where,
Do we have
in front of council?
a notice requirement period
No,
for a public hearing?
No.
Okay.
no, but if you're gonna hold a public hearing, you've gotta, and you want it to be a full public hearing, then you should provide notice and give people the opportunity to see it and attend.
No, I was talking about a time period. between-
Oh, no,
Yeah, okay.
no.
What's your pleasure?
I think we need a full public hearing.
Well, I think it should be a council meeting as well. That way
Oh,
we
yeah.
can take action on it right away. If we came to a consensus
Well, we
or,
would still have until March 7th to do that.
yeah.
So, I mean, if that were the case, we could do, if you're trying to come up to a conclusion the same night that we're having a public hearing, we could do that on the 7th.
Well, I think that it would be better to have the public hearing next week, if possible, maybe Monday night, if most council members are available. Have discussion and possible action on the agenda for that meeting after the public hearing. And then if we can't make a decision, then we've got another week to think about it.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
I totally agree.
Is that a motion?
I'll make the motion that we have a public hearing, and then on next week, Monday at 7 PM, and then have discussion and possible action on this item after the public hearing.
Second.
And just to clarify, that would be to set a special council meeting
Set a
with a
special
public
council meeting,
hearing
yes.
at the meeting.
Is that on all three options?
I think that we should keep all three options open, because we really don't have a consensus yet. Unless, does anybody, all right, how many of us want to remove one of the options? I think that the public hearing, and that's the purpose of the public hearing, is to find out whether, look at all three options.
I would agree, Joyce.
Okay, there was a second?
Oh, if not, I'll second it, if there
I
wasn't.
think you
I
said.
think
already
Paul,
did.
Paul had it.
Okay.
Okay. So I've got another question. All right, so the big thing is getting a grant
Yep.
proposal.
Yep.
How much money, if we got the grant, would we get the full amount for this?
So, Joyce, just 1 second. So we do have a motion, a second, on public hearing and
Okay.
special meeting.
All right,
Okay. Anything else on that?
no.
Okay. Anybody else on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Go ahead, Joyce.
Okay, so are you expecting that the grant would pay for the whole thing, or how much of it would you expect it to pay?
Generally, these grant programs are 80/20, so 80%
Okay, so we'd have to pay
federally
20%.
funded. Yep.
And then, if we don't get the grant, then what are our options after that?
Yeah, that's a great question. At that point in time, we'd have to come back probably to council and ask that same question. You know, there are things that we could do as kind of Band-Aid type approaches.
Bond
You know,
for it.
Could we could bond for it. We could bond for the whole thing if that works out. We could do slim down to try to buy us 5 to 10 more years until, you know, we could do something else. Those options would have to be probably more exhaustively looked at in the future, but, you know, we could look at adding a girder onto the bridge. We could look at putting the pedestrian facilities on a separate crossing kind of right next to the existing bridge or something like that. So those are things that we could look at with that.
And then, one last question. So, you've got the hills from Crestview Drive and Cooley Road going down to the freeway. Those are fairly steep slopes.
Yep.
Is that gonna mean there's gonna be a lot of fill there to put in? I mean, so for example, if we had those roundabouts, would you need fill and then fencing, or how would that be done?
Generally, what we've been looking at for those is that we would just accommodate that extra section on the bridge itself rather than filling stuff in.
Oh, so you would add extra bridge, okay.
Yeah, so that's, like I said, one of the reasons why the bridge on the roundabout option is bigger at the top kind of thing.
Okay, you got a lot of flare
Yep,
at either end, okay?
And, you know, with the option 3, the bridge for option 3 ended up being probably higher up than what you see the existing bridge at. And that's not really a big problem. Bridges can be really as tall as you want them to be.
Yeah.
So that's really not too much of a concern there.
Yeah, so you're just gonna have a longer bridge for number 3.
Right. Yep.
Okay, thanks.
All right, do we have a motion on the application?
I'll move we direct staff to establish start the application process for the federal grant.
I'll second that.
Got a motion, a second. Any further discussion on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dean. Discussion and possible action on updating City Hall mask policy.
So I worked with Paul on this. Paul, you know, and I originally put together that initial policy that the council voted on October, I think. It's been a little while now. So if you look in the packet, the original, I should say the policy that's currently in place is the first one, and then the second policy would be the update to that. And I don't know if Paul wants to provide any comment or anything additional to that.
Yeah, thanks. So initially, kind of where this comes from is that we're going to be having open voting sometime in March, or early voting, I should say, sorry. And we want to make sure people feel welcome here. We want to make sure that, you know, folks, whether they're masked or not masked, whatever side they're on, feel welcome and part of the voting process. So Aaron had reached out to me, and you saw kind of what we had thought about. But I'll be honest, you guys, since then I've kind of been rethinking this a little bit, and so I want to explain a couple things and maybe go in a more lenient direction on masking and explain sort of why. And I know this is really important to me because I was the one in October that really pushed toward masking. So the first reason I want to move in another direction is just based on the numbers. If you go to the St. Croix County dashboard today, we only have 30 new cases in St. Croix County, which is 91,686 people. So we're a very small portion of that. And that's their 7-day average has basically been 30 cases. So if you look at the Omicron virus, it seems to have peaked in this area as well as nationwide. That's not to say that the pandemic is done. I want to be very clear. We're still very much in it. But the numbers are just down. And so I don't think those numbers really warrant a kind of mass mandate at City Hall at this point. I did talk to the staff at St. Croix County Health Department today, actually. And my question for them was, if the numbers have gone down so far, then how come the overall rating, which they rate as a red, which is very high, how come the overall rating hasn't changed? And what was explained to me today is that there's a 2-week delay in changing those ratings. So they're still actually going off numbers from 2 weeks ago, which aren't the current numbers. And what they told me is they fully expect that the rating will be changed on Wednesday of this week, that it will be downgraded. I don't know whether that's to the orange level or the yellow level, so to speak. But they have to get the approval of the epidemiologist and based on those numbers. So what I'm trying to say is St. Croix County saying the situation, although again, the pandemic's not over, we're at a different point. And if COVID's taught us anything, I just want to say this, you guys, it's to be flexible, right? It's to be flexible. You've got to deal with what the numbers are on the ground. So that's the biggest reason I'm really looking at more leniency here. The other thing is that back in October, we had roughly a 52, 53% vaccination rate. We're now up to a 60% vaccination rate. So 6 out of 10 people, and 63% have already had their first dose of the COVID vaccine. So we're sitting at a better spot. And then in addition, I just want to add that Omicron has been so contagious, right, that so many people have gotten it and gotten through it. I don't have the numbers for that, but if you were to add the 63% plus the people have got it, I just think we're at a different point in terms of the threat level. My third reason for really kind of lifting that mask mandate is looking at City Hall itself. We've had upgrades to, I don't know what you call the front desk there. You guys can maybe help me. Is it the front
The
desk?
glass in the front window.
Yeah, so there's glass in the front window. I think the staff is really protected in a good way. I think it makes sense to open up City Hall. They're in a good position now, I think, to help people. It's just more convenient for the public to come in as well. My next reason is just the police department. I want to thank Chief Willems, who's here tonight, who did have to enforce this at one of our meetings a few weeks back. I just believe Hudson PD has bigger priorities. We need to have the PD out in the streets for public safety, and so I don't want them to feel the need to enforce anything at City Hall, which is another reason I want to lift this at this point. Another reason is that city committees have been meeting on Zoom. Just to be clear, that was never my intention. I didn't think that was going to happen when we passed the policy in October, but that was the reaction of city staff. So I think it's really important that these committees need to meet in person. Public Works, Parks, Diversity Committee, on and on and on. I think we're losing city efficiency. So I think it's time to go back to meeting live, and I think that's going to help all of us in the city. I also think that we should continue to do Zoom on these city council meetings so people can participate and view in whatever way they feel safe. I know some people are going to be nervous about lifting a mask mandate, and I want to make sure that they're involved too. So I think we should continue to do Zoom meetings for city council. And then the other thing I want to say is we can change this in the future. So I think lifting a mask mandate in City Hall makes sense, again, based on the numbers and what we're really seeing on the ground here in St. Croix County and in Hudson. But I think we have to also be smart and say this, we need to be flexible. If you actually look at case numbers, they've peaked in the last 2 years. They peak at the same time. They peak in November, December, January, and that's what it did the last 2 winters, and it did it again this winter. And so at some point, who knows? We really don't know where we're going with this pandemic, but in the fall, we may have to revisit this, or summer, depending on numbers, right? And relook at it again. So again, flexibility is the key, and I think the thing that needs to drive this entire policy is the numbers on the ground. So with that said, I don't have any regrets about what we've done with the mask policy since October 5th, because I think we've kept the public safe. We have gone through the total peaks masking, which I think is smart. if you look back, I wrote down a February, if I can read my own writing here. Basically, I'm sorry, back in January, the case numbers were 265 on January the 19th. That was the peak in St. Croix County. So 265 means new cases a day, and we're at 30, which we're just a fraction of what we used to be. And that's why I'm saying the flexibility is really the key. So again, I'm glad we protected the public. I think we're at a different point right now locally. Pandemic's not over, but I think it makes sense to lift any mask mandate at City Hall. So at this point, I would make a motion to lift a mask mandate at City Hall with the idea that we will be flexible in the future.
I will second that.
So you're saying that we will just completely remove the mask policy? So what is the, what are the current, or what are the expected recommendations of the county regarding mask use?
So we'll know on Wednesday if they redo their status every Wednesday.
Right. So if they move down to the level that they were talking about, what would the mask recommendations be for that level?
I can't answer that. We're going to have to wait and see what they adjust it to on Wednesday. We'll have to see what the county comes out with on Wednesday.
Okay.
I can't speak for the county health department on that. What I'm saying is they're seeing the same trend. They're saying this is, if you're going to make an adjustment, basically the facts on the ground seem like this might be a good time to do it.
Okay.
We need to do it pre-election, and so being that it's on the agenda now, I just thought I'd throw that on the table, so.
All right, we got a motion, a second. Any further discussion, Bill?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify one thing that you had mentioned, Paul, and correct me if I'm wrong, Aaron. We are not currently doing city council meetings with Zoom links to the public. Is that correct?
Right, we're using them for when, we have those that can't make it to the meeting, consultants, things like that, that it's cheaper for them to be able to Zoom in instead of have to travel and that sort of stuff. So we would, anticipate continuing that for the foreseeable future.
Maybe that's something we can put on a future agenda. I thought that the public could still access what we're doing.
No.
We stopped
So
doing
maybe
that, I
we'll put
believe,
that
for a
next
little while.
All right, anybody else?
Just one thing, could we still have signage about recommending masks? I don't know that was something.
Thank you. Yes, as a friendly
we-
amendment, I would take the language of masks are recommended at City Hall. Thank you for that.
Anybody else? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Is that effective immediately?
Oh, I was going to say starting tomorrow. I probably should motion that.
What's that?
Should I motion that into the, I was thinking tomorrow, but I
No, that's
forgot to
fine.
say.
I think we're good. We're just.
Okay.
No, we got it. We know. Thank you.
Discussion and possible action on federal infrastructure funding strategy.
All right, good evening again. So we have gotten much more guidance related to the federal infrastructure bill, is what they're calling it, law, in regards to how the state of Wisconsin is sharing the federal infrastructure money with local municipalities like ourselves. Essentially, there's two different pots of money. One is for the first year of the federal infrastructure bill, and the second pot is for the last 4 years of the infrastructure bill. First year is focused towards projects that can get out the door very quickly and easily, so focusing on things like repaving projects without needing things like easements and right-of-way purchase, that kind of thing. Have to get the plans done by August, like all the way approved by August, so these projects have to be very quick. The second chunk, the years 2 through 5, are able to be opened up for more complicated projects like reconstruction projects. We've listed a bunch of projects that we are looking to submit grant applications for. Looking for feedback tonight from City Council if those projects are, good with you guys for us to submit grant applications for or not, or if you have any pluses or minuses, and then we'll move forward from there.
11th Street didn't qualify.
The bridge
Bridge.
we were talking about?
Yeah,
So I've listed it here under
I'm sorry,
the.
mine, I'm not there yet. but-
Oh, okay. It is listed under the years 2 through 5.
2 through 5, okay.
Yep. So that's federal fiscal year 23 through 26 if you're looking at it on the issue sheet. So officially, we'd be looking to have council make a motion to direct staff to develop grant applications for these projects.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion and possible action regarding approval. Thanks, Dean. Are you still?
I'm here.
Discussion and possible action regarding approval of a letter of engagement with SEH for design tasks related to demolition of the old fire station building and expansion of the Williams lot.
Yeah, as mentioned at Finance Committee, we went out or to get quotes from our 2 consultants we normally work with for this work. The work involved is going to be more significant than we initially thought of because of the issues with the building holding up 3rd Street on the east side of the building. So that's kind of reflected in the funding amount that will be proposed here tonight with this LOE. Yeah, any questions about the rest of this?
I don't think we have a choice. We just need to move forward with this.
Yeah.
You have a motion?
So I move to approve the letter of engagement with SEH on the demolition of the old fire station.
Second.
A motion and a second. Discussion?
Yeah, Dean, just a thought, if we need to keep part of the building up for the retaining wall, what came to me when I was looking this over was, I think it'd be really neat to do a police or fire memorial or something, like a piece of the original building that would be preserved against that wall and then have some kind of like honoring of our public servants, basically.
Put their shields on there.
Or something, yeah. I mean, I don't know what it would look like, but it just came to me that if we have to keep, it'd be kind of cool to have the part of the original building there with the wall, with this on it in front of the parking lot, where it'd be very public, people could see it. So just a thought, it's not,
We can look into
Anybody
that.
else? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank
Motion's
you.
approved. Thank you, Dean. I've got nothing. Anybody?
I'd just like to say and congratulate all the winners of the Chamber of Commerce
Oh, yes, yeah.
award winners for all the work that those folks have done that deserve those honors from the
Yeah.
Chamber of Commerce.
No, good. Thank you for that.
Absolutely, and thank you to the Chamber of Commerce for hosting that and for all the work that they do in our community to help us flourish. I have a potential item for a future agenda. I am hoping that we can take a look at the short-term rental. I'm wondering if we can look at what some of our neighboring communities are doing, and I'm not sure if at our next meeting of March 7th, if a proposal could come back or if that has to go on to the Plan Commission, but I will fall to your judgment on that. We're entering a big tourism city season here soon, so I think it'd be smart to take a look at this again before we get into it.
Okay.
I can't ask. Short-term rentals, I'm wondering, because I thought we addressed that, didn't
Yeah,
we?
you're talking about the Airbnb.
The Airbnb.
Yeah.
Airbnb, yep.
Okay. Sounds good.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Anybody else? Is there a motion?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Stand adjourned. Thank you.